Welcome to this first video in a whole series of how to get started and to use Unity right from beginners up to experienced game developers. What we're doing today is having a look at how to install Unity and to go through a little bit of maybe the gotchas and the way things are set up underneath the engine once you've got it installed that aren't particularly obvious when you first get going. Right, so to begin you need to go to unity.com and you will be faced with a screen pretty much like this. Of course, when you're doing it, it might have changed, but somewhere on their website there will be a download button. So you want to go to the download. It's going to give you an option for the version of the Unity Hub that you need to download, and you can download it directly from here onto your machine. Now the Unity Hub is kind of a centralized spot that will manage a whole different bunch of installs of Unity, because you can have multiple versions of Unity running on your machine at any one time. Now, what's important to note is when you're starting out as a Unity developer, it is free. You can read about the licensing and the plans. Now, unless you are earning over 200,000 Ks, that would be US dollars, in revenue a year, you don't have to worry about getting the Pro license. And there's really nothing you can do in the Pro version that you can't do in the personal version. It's extremely powerful. So unless you become very successful and start selling lots and lots of games, you really won't have to worry about going up the license. Anyway, let's continue by downloading to our machine the version for your machine and then installing it. Now, I've already downloaded a version and installed it and opened it up. Now, I've obviously been using this for a lot of years, so you can see I've got a lot of projects in here. What you'll see when you run the Unity Hub for the first time is some folders down the left-hand side here. So you've got projects, installs, learn, community, and settings. Projects is where you will find any projects that you have started to work on. So games that you've been developing or things you've been testing out will be down in here. Yours, if you've just installed the hub for the first time, will be completely empty. Now, the important thing right now is the installs tab here. This will show you what versions of Unity you have on your machine. So on my machine, you'll see that I have Unity 6.3 Alpha. Now, this is obviously in development, and I would not recommend that you use it to start learning Unity. In fact, I did open it the other day, and it has a whole bunch of errors in there that aren't useful when you're trying to learn. The one we're doing at the moment is the current official release version, which is Unity 6.1. Now you can find out what the official releases are, and if you're a first timer, it's probably best that you come over into the official releases to use the ones that are in there. If this is the first time using the hub, then you will have nothing in here. So it's time to go to Install Editor. Now, before we actually do that, you will also need to have created a Unity account, which is also free, but identifies you with the things that you've downloaded and your projects and stuff like that that Unity stores in the cloud for you so that you can get them at any time. When you're logged in, you'll get your profile picture and that logged in at the top here. Now, I'm kind of always logged in, but if you click on this view and you're not logged in, you'll probably have to go through the process of signing in here. So just make sure you have a look as to whether you're signed in. At some point in this process, as you're going through all this, it will ask you to sign up for a Unity account and to sign in. Right, so let's go to Install Editor. Again, as I've said, you want to grab the recommended current official release, which you can now see is 6.1 version 1.13. Now I've got 0.9 I think on the end of mine, which was the official release. These change all the time. Another little point I should make out, just because Unity updates its versions doesn't mean you should update your versions. So if you've started using, say, Unity 6 and you've created this great big gaming project that does all these wonderful things and it's working really well, it's hardly got any bugs in it, do not upgrade to the next version of Unity when it comes out, because it can instantly break a whole heap of things. Professional game development studios do not chase the latest version of Unity. They actually stick with the one that they've been using and that they've been developing their product for, because they know that if they update to the next or the latest and greatest, then it could just break everything. So just keep that in mind. Whatever version of Unity you start with, just stick with it. If you're starting a brand new project, then you probably want to get the latest official release. So I'm just going to, I don't have this one, so I'm just going to go install this so you can see what it looks like when you do go through it. The first thing you will be bombarded with is this massive window of all of the different tools that you may require. Now, initially, you probably don't need to tick any of these tools if you're just learning. The first part is the dev tools. This is Visual Studio Code that is now being used with Unity for doing the coding part. And you can see for me that it says that it's installed because I already use it. You'll want to make sure that it is ticked so that it does get installed if you don't have it, because you will need it later on for coding. Underneath that, you'll have a whole list of different platforms for what you might want to be building your project for. Initially, you don't have to worry about all of these things. You can come back and install them later. What you will need to do is just make sure that you've got your platform ticked if you want to build out to it. So in this case, I'm actually on my Mac, so I might want to tick Mac build support, Mac dedicated server build support. And if I wanted to build a web version, I could tick web as well. Now, I'm only using this version of Unity to demonstrate and teach Unity itself. I'm not going to be sort of building out to any of these things right now, so I won't need them. In addition, you've got language packs if you require them. Then there's also documentation. You don't need to install documentation unless you're going to be offline, because it's all online anyway, and I'll show you where that is a little bit later. So essentially we've come to this page, and the only thing that we need really installed besides Unity is Visual Studio Code. So from here, click on install, and then it will actually go and install Unity for you. While that's downloading, you might like to go and get a coffee, or you can read through the Unity manual, or I guess you could do both if you'd like. This is the Unity manual. It is very, very extensive, and you'll find it at docs.unity3d.com, manual, Unity manual.html. There's a manual version for all the different types of versions of Unity. Now, I'm using 6.1, so I've got it set to Unity 6.1 here. And you can see all of the old versions going back to 5.2. Wow, that's kind of about where I started using Unity all those years ago, and it has definitely changed a fair bit since then. Anyway, let's have a look at 6.1 user manual. So there is a scripting part of the manual, and then there's also a documentation part of the manual. You'll look at the scripting part quite a lot. So there's a scripting API up here, and it goes through how you're going to sort of start interacting with the engine by writing C# code. For now, don't get too hung up about that. But the manual is a good place to sort of start and just to see what features there are. There's also links to, like, let's go and play a game, or let's go and build this. In this particular case here, there's something about boosting rendering performance, so making your game look really cool, and actually talking through the rendering pipelines and all the different ways that you can render. Now, eventually down the track, we'll get to talking about the different looks that you can actually set up for your game. But for now, just search through here and have a little look at all these different bits and pieces. It's always good to come back if you ever get stuck and just read the documentation, because you just might have missed something little, or there's a setting you're not quite sure what it does. Of course, in these videos, we're not going to have time to actually look at each single tiny little checkbox that's in the Unity editor. So in here you'll actually find great examples of what they all do for you and how you can use them in your game. Now, once Unity has finished installing, it's time to create a project. Before we do that, we'll just quickly have a look at these other tabs here. There's a Learn tab, which has a whole bunch of different projects that you can go through, and it can walk you through the creation of different games, give you a whole heap of assets, and I often use a lot of these assets as well. I've used this tanks one quite a bit. It's a really nice little environment for just using those sorts of game characters and things in your own projects. Have a look in there. There's also community with discussion boards, and then other products such as Unity AI, the asset store, which we'll talk about, and on-demand training, etc., etc. And then of course you've got the settings here. Now, there's settings in the hub, are settings for each of your projects and where they will sort of end up. So you've got your projects location. This is default location where it will try and put your projects, and mine is going into Users Penny Library, Mobile Documents, Cloud, blah blah blah. Not quite sure where that got set and why that happened. Obviously I must have just used it once and it got stuck there. Anyway, this is whatever you would like it to be. The installs tells you whereabouts on your machine the folders that the installs actually went into. You really shouldn't have to go into these folders and dig around through them, so I wouldn't actually recommend it. You've got appearances. I like to have mine on the dark setting, but you can change that. The licenses. Now, this is a part here where if you're not logged in with your account, you probably won't have any licenses here. And this is probably the time that you should click on your add button to make sure that you add a personal license and actually sign up through the Unity website. Privacy, you can opt in or out of analytics. And then finally, advanced. And this is where you can actually opt in and out to having access to the beta releases if you want to investigate new features. If you're just starting out, you probably don't want to go playing around with the beta versions until you've actually figured out what the base version of Unity does. All right, so that is the Unity Hub, and I'm going to leave this video here because in the next video we're going to come back and go to the Projects tab in the Hub and actually open up Unity for the first time with a new game environment.